violent protests across the country have been fuelled by the spread of misinformation online. Social media platforms such as Telegram, Signal and X, formerly Twitter of course, have been used to spread hate speech and go some way to organising these riots. Posts in one Telegram channel list immigration lawyers and advice centres telling members to attack them at a specified time later this week. We'll hear from one lawyer who is concerned for her safety after 5 o'clock. That Telegram group has grown to 12,000 members. That's gone up from around 150 on Friday night. Earlier, Esther Jai, mother of Brianna Jai, told Times Radio that social media companies must be held to account.
It's a very, very, very toxic environment, and I think that social media companies need to take more responsibility for what is going on these platforms. And if anything, I think that social media needs to be regulated the same as any other media would be.
Well, Times Radio's Ollie Cole's been monitoring these groups and is with us now. Ollie, hello.
Hi, Callum.
So then first of all, what's it like to be in these groups and what is the latest that they are talking about?
Not nice is the answer to that first question. It's one of those things that you have to make sure that you're sort of detaching yourself from fairly regularly because the language in them is quite frankly horrific. Like you said there, early this morning when I woke up, there was already this list of over 30 locations, refugee support centres, asylum, immigration hubs, immigration lawyers, all being listed as targets for further action on Wednesday. We're, of course, not saying where those are because we don't want to publicise them. Just to give you a sort of sense of scale of the weekend, these groups had sort of 25 to 30 total places where they were going to be popping up. We saw, of course, about sort of half a dozen of those escalate into the horrific scenes we've seen over the weekend, and on the front pages, another 5 or so required quite firm policing. And so that is where attention is being aimed at the moment. But what surrounds these lists, what surrounds those messages is quite frankly just awful, racist, horrific language, chat saying that we are at war. Rioters last night, while they were setting hotels alight, one group called for its followers to rise in the name of white power. Images of Adolf Hitler praising him as a politician who cared for his people. The N-word, the P-word, the hatred of immigrants is sort of everywhere. And in the last couple of hours, in one group, because there are multiple, there has been what is being touted as a manual for arson posted there. And in the last sort of 20 minutes or so, I'm just looking at one group now, there are a load of flame emojis, and it says, and this is quite, distressing language, burn all mosques, F Allah, kill all Muslims is what it says at the bottom of it. And that what's difficult about being in these groups is the fact that nobody else reacts to that language. It's seen as normal, and that is obviously quite concerning, and it is across multiple groups on Telegram, on Facebook, on WhatsApp and other social medias.
Yeah. Ollie, stay with us. Gosh, it is distressing to hear that this is the reality of what is going on with all of this. Stay there while we bring in Emily Taylor, the CEO of Oxford Information Labs Limited, who specialises in cybersecurity, internet law and governance. Emily, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Callum.
So Ollie's given us an insight into, how these things are being talked about, discussed, how these people are interacting with one another. Is it possible to police that? Sir Keir Starmer has spoken of his desire, really, that online activity be tackled as well, and that social media firms need something of an immediate response. But a lot of this is not actually accessible to the authorities. Is that right?
Well, the entire incident shows that hateful words, as we've just been hearing, can lead to violence in the real world. And Keir Starmer and the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, have both been very clear in calling out both the social media companies and also the illegality of what's at store. But you're right, it is a complicated picture. It seems that there have been a number of, Let's not forget that the incident that has provoked all of this was a horrifying attack on children, and of course, feelings are running high in this situation. But what we've seen, and the politicians are clear about this, is that the protests, the violent protests, have nothing to do with the people who are mourning and holding vigils for those victims. So what can be done with social media platforms? Well, there is a law, the Online Safety Act in the UK, which quite clearly categorises as illegal content racially or religiously aggravated public order offences and inciting violence. So we're clearly in the illegal content type of zone, which is horrifying though it is a much clearer legal landscape. But actually separating the roles and responsibilities of the platforms themselves from the individuals who are promoting this content is going to take quite a lot of teasing out.
Well, so on that then, so the Online Safety Act, this feels almost like the first, certainly very pronounced challenge for it. Is it lacking? Is this evidence that it is not working and that it actually needs reviewed?
It depends on, whether or not it's effective will depend on what happens next rather than what happens in advance of the incident. And when you look at the sort of the issues that were called out in the Online Safety Act, it does make you reflect on how difficult it is to regulate internet content because the concerns move so quickly. You can clearly see in the Online Safety Act that what was in legislators' mind was much more about the protection of children from things like suicide sites, from self-harm and so on. But there is a category for incitement to violence, which is a crime. Inciting violence is a crime. And that as well as the hard law of the Online Safety Act, there are also voluntary arrangements. And very relevant here is the Christchurch Call, which is an international voluntary arrangement between governments and several of the leading social media platforms, not including TikTok, not including Telegram, but Meta, Google, Microsoft and others are all signatories.
Okay. So then it's about what happens after this. In terms of what Sir Keir Starmer has said about an immediate response from social media companies, in reality, what could that actually be?
Well, in fact, in threat to life situations, and there have unfortunately been several. You'll remember a few years ago in Paris there were those terrible incidents in the Bataclan, where where the social media platforms were actually working very closely with law enforcement and providing information in real time. So where there are emergencies and clear illegality, the picture is usually one of cooperation. Where it gets difficult is where the content is harmful but not illegal, and that has been a very controversial debate because, of course, when you are regulating content, when you're regulating speech, you have to be very careful to not be overstepping and not to be, compromising human rights such as the freedom of expression.
Yeah. Emily, thank you very much. That's very helpful. It's good to speak to you. That's Emily Taylor, the CEO of Oxford Information Labs.